Greetings, travelers. Tonight let us drift back to the shores of the ancient Mediterranean. Imagine this, an ancient city shimmering with wealth, where merchants controlled seas and silks and where ships returned with gold and ivory from lands so far away they seemed like dreams. This was Carthage, the powerful rival of Rome. But Carthage had a secret weapon, one that didn't use swords or elephants or fire. Instead, it used words. And some historians whisper that Carthage may have been one of the first civilizations to master what we now call fake news. Stories carefully planted, rumors whispered across markets, entire myths designed not just to protect their empire, but to mislead the world beyond their walls. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, we will wander through the soft shadows of this forgotten craft. The way Carthage twisted truth into armor, and how their legends echo strangely into our own world of misinformation. If you enjoy drifting through strange corners of history with me, remember to like this video and subscribe, so you'll always have another midnight tale waiting. Carthage rose on the shores of North Africa, near today's Tunis, around 800 BC. It was founded, so legend says, by Queen Dido, a woman who, in the Roman telling, fled from her brother's cruelty and tricked a foreign king into giving her land by cutting an ox hide into thin strips, stretching it wide enough to claim a great hill. Already notice the theme: cunning, wit, and the bending of truth. This origin story itself may be one of the earliest inventions of Carthaginian myth-making, whether born from their own storytellers or painted by outsiders who wanted to show them as sly and clever. But as Carthage grew into a great maritime power with colonies in Spain and islands across the Mediterranean, it discovered a more dangerous tool, not armies but stories. The Carthaginians were masters of secrecy. They guarded their trade routes like sacred treasures. Carthaginian captains, it said, would even sink their ships rather than allow foreigners to follow them into the unknown Atlantic waters. Yet they also spread rumors deliberately. One tale tells of strange voyages beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the place we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. In these stories, Carthaginian sailors claim to have found a paradise, an island overflowing with beauty and resources. A land so rich and fertile that anyone who reached it could live in endless comfort. And yet, this very paradise was described as dangerous to settle, a place forbidden by law, guarded in secrecy. Why? Many believe Carthage invented this story to keep rivals away. If they spread tales that the seas beyond were haunted, cursed, or filled with dangerous gods, then Greeks and Romans might hesitate to sail too far. Meanwhile, Carthage could quietly exploit distant lands for themselves. Fake news, in this sense, became a kind of shield, a cloak to hide their true ambitions. We see another example in how Carthage shaped its image in religion. Romans would later describe the Carthaginians as bloodthirsty, claiming they sacrificed children to their god Baal. Archaeologists still debate whether this was true or whether it was Rome's own propaganda, fake news to paint Carthage as monstrous and justify their destruction. But Carthage itself used religion as a weapon of rumor. Priests and traders whispered of gods who protected their fleets, of rituals that guaranteed storms would wreck foreign ships. These stories may not have been believed by everyone, but in the ancient world, fear was as real as fact. If a rival sailor thought the sea was cursed by Carthaginian magic, he might turn back, and that hesitation was all Carthage needed. One of the most fascinating pieces of Carthaginian misinformation comes from a figure named Hanno the Navigator. Around the 5th century BC, he supposedly sailed with a great fleet down the coast of Africa. He left behind an account describing lands filled with strange creatures, fiery mountains, and even hairy wild people. What some think may have been the first description of gorillas. But scholars wonder, How much of this was real, and how much was carefully crafted exaggeration, designed to both amaze and mislead? If rivals believed Africa was too wild, too dangerous, then Carthage could continue its trading expeditions without interference. Hanno's voyage, then, may have been part travelogue and part psychological warfare. Carthage even manipulated Rome with rumors. Before the Punic Wars, they tried to convince other Mediterranean states that Rome was brutal, greedy, and untrustworthy. At the same time, Roman writers accused Carthage of being decadent, scheming, and cruel. The truth was blurred on both sides, wrapped in propaganda that spread like whispers in the dark. And in the middle stood ordinary people, sailors, merchants, soldiers, who could never quite be sure what was real. But perhaps the most chilling example of Carthaginian disinformation was their silence. They rarely wrote down their secrets. When Rome finally destroyed Carthage in 146 BC, most of their records were burned. And so almost everything we know comes from Rome's words, Rome's propaganda, Rome's fake news. Did Carthage truly sacrifice children? Did they really discover faraway islands? Or were these all stories shaped and reshaped across centuries until truth and falsehood became indistinguishable? The city itself, buried in ash and ruin, could no longer correct the record. In a way, Rome's ultimate act of fake news was not just what they wrote, but what they erased. As the rivalry with Rome deepened, Carthage turned its skill for deception toward war itself. The Punic Wars, those long, grinding conflicts between the two powers, were fought not only with steel, but also with rumor. Carthaginian generals learned to use whispers as much as spears. When Hannibal crossed the Alps with his elephants, he didn't just terrify the Roman countryside with his army. He also seeded panic through carefully placed rumors. That his force was larger than it truly was, that his elephants were unstoppable monsters, that gods themselves marched with him. Imagine hearing as a Roman farmer that a foreign general had brought giant beasts across the mountains, creatures that had never before been seen in Italy. The fear spread faster than his troops, and fear in war is its own weapon. But fake news also worked against Carthage. Roman senators were masters of propaganda, and they wove tales designed to turn their own citizens and their allies against the city across the sea. The most powerful of these stories was the claim that Carthaginians routinely sacrificed infants to their god. Whether true or exaggerated, the tale horrified Roman audiences. It painted Carthage not just as an enemy, but as a society beyond redemption. Archaeological digs at Carthage have uncovered burial grounds of young children, but historians remain divided. Were these the victims of ritual sacrifice, or simply cemeteries for infants who died naturally, as was common in the ancient world? We may never know. But the effectiveness of the story is undeniable. It became the centerpiece of Rome's justification for Carthage's destruction. And it has lingered for more than 2,000 years, coloring the way we see Carthage even now. There is a strange irony here. Carthage may have invented fake news to shield itself, to keep its trade routes secret, to frighten rivals, to shape its reputation. But in the end, Rome turned the same weapon against them, more devastating than any sword. When the final war came and Rome laid siege to Carthage, the city's defenses crumbled not only under fire and starvation, but under centuries of poisoned words. Carthage was burned to the ground in 146 BC. Its walls toppled, its people enslaved, its libraries gone. And yet, the rumors survived, the myths of cruelty, the tales of trickery, the whispers of forbidden rituals. In death, Carthage was defined by its enemies' stories. And so the greatest irony of all may be this. The masters of fake news were ultimately undone by fake news itself. What lingers is the lesson. That truth and lies are not opposites in history, but companions. That rumors once planted grow like vines, wrapping themselves around the ruins of memory. When we think of Carthage now, we see both the proud seafaring empire that stretched its influence across the Mediterranean, and the shadowy, sinister caricature painted by Rome. And between those two images perhaps lies the real Carthage, forever lost. The night is quiet now and Carthage sleeps under its ruins. But its whispers remain, carried through time, that stories can conquer, that rumors can protect, and that truth once broken is never whole again. Thank you for joining me in tonight's strange wander. May your dreams be calm and your curiosity stay alive. Don't forget to subscribe and we'll meet again in the quiet corners of history. Good night.